Upon entering the library, Michael glimpsed the nanny, Riley Monroe, on the floor leaning against the oak bookshelf. She was clutching a children's book about mothers and daughters, and little did he know that she harbored a profound sorrow. She said desperately, "They ripped my baby from my arms while she screamed, 'Mama,' and I've never seen her again." "Riley, for heaven's sake, what did you just say?" Michael closed the door behind him, his heart pounding, still breathless from having scoured the house for the nanny who had bolted when she was telling a story to the twins. "I told the truth, Mr. Jordan. The truth I've been concealing for 10 years. She lifted her red-rimmed eyes, and Michael saw something he'd never witnessed before, a pain so profound it seemed capable of shattering the world into pieces. "What, baby? What is this about?" He approached slowly, as if any sudden movement might cause Riley to vanish. "My daughter, Blair Monroe. She's 11 years old now, the same age as Victoria and Isabel. That's why I cry every time I read to your girls, because I'm reminded of my baby, whom I rocked every night, who took her first wobbly steps clinging to my fingers." Michael's voice emerged as a whisper. "Where is she?" "I don't know." The response struck like a gunshot. "A racist neighbor reported me when I was 18, said a poor black girl wasn't fit to raise a child. The social worker showed up at my door, ripped Blair from my arms. She was only 1 year old, Mr. Jordan. 1 year. Michael felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. "This can't be true." I begged on my knees. I cried. I screamed. I promised anything. But I had no money for a lawyer. I knew no one of consequence. Riley began pacing back and forth, like a caged animal. "The system decided my Blair would be better off with a wealthy white family. As if love counts for nothing." "Riley." Michael tried to reach for her, but she continued, now speaking faster, as if the words were burning inside her. "Do you know the worst part, Mr. Jordan? It's that I had an older sister, Kendall. We were separated as children. She went to a rich family. I stayed with our poor mother. When my mother died, I was alone in the world. If Kendall had been with me when Blair was born, maybe she wouldn't have been taken. Have you tried to find your sister or your daughter?" Riley laughed, but it was a hollow sound laced with bitterness. "Every week for 10 years, Mr. Jordan. Every week I call social services, shelters, anywhere that might have information about my Blair. And you know what always happens?" Michael shook his head, already dreading the answer. "Always the same social worker blocking my requests, a woman named Kendall Avery. Ironic, isn't it? Having the same name as my lost sister." Riley ran a hand through her hair, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Riley, look at me." Michael held her shoulders firmly. "You will find your daughter. I will help you." "Why?" The question came out as a broken whisper. Why would the great Michael Jordan care about a broken nanny who lost her own daughter? Michael looked into her eyes, and for the first time, Riley saw something she hadn't expected. Pure determination. "Because every mother deserves to fight for her daughter, and because I have resources you never had." Riley felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. "Would you really do that?" "We'll start tomorrow. I'll hire the best investigator in Chicago." Michael was already pulling his phone from his pocket. "And Riley, if this social worker, Kendall Avery, has been blocking you for 10 years, she'll have to explain why. In person." The silence that followed was charged with possibility. Riley looked at the book in her hands, the story of a mother and daughter she could never finish reading without crying. "Mr. Jordan? What if it's too late? What if Blair doesn't even remember me? Then we'll make her remember." Michael's voice was as firm as steel. "A mother never gives up, Riley, and from now on, you're no longer alone in this fight." For the first time in 10 years, Riley Monroe smiled. Not a full smile, but a fragile flicker of something she thought she had lost forever. The possibility of finding her daughter again. Hours later, Michael Jordan was speaking with the investigator he had hired. "Mr. Jordan, this isn't negligence. It's systematic." Wyatt Chandler closed the folder with a dry snap. "No one can block cases for years without protection from someone very powerful." Michael leaned forward, tense. "What did you discover?" Riley Monroe didn't try to get her daughter back a few times. Wyatt turned the laptop to Michael. She tried 47 times, 47 requests in 10 years, all denied by the same person, Kendall Avery. Michael's blood ran cold. All of them? And the reasons change as it suits. Emotional instability, insufficient resources, inadequate environment. Wyatt clicked on another file, as if she made up different excuses for each request. This Kendall is a sadist, or she's protecting someone. Wyatt paused dramatically. Mr. Jordan, Kendall Avery isn't just corrupt. She's dangerous. How so? She has a pattern. Over the last 12 years, she separated dozens of black children from young mothers under questionable circumstances. Wyatt's eyes were hard as stone. All these children went to specific wealthy white families. They sell children. Worse, they collect trophies. Wyatt displayed photos on his tablet. Families obsessed with appearing progressive. The children appear at charity events but are treated as status symbols, not as children. Michael felt nauseated. And Blair? Blair Emerson attends Whitmore Academy. Wyatt made a calculated pause that made Michael's heart stop. The same school as Victoria and Isabel Jordan. The world collapsed. What? Her nanny has worked for you for 3 years. Blair has been attending school with your daughters for 2. Wyatt leaned in. Be careful. Wyatt's voice was grim. Kendall has dangerous connections. Senators, judges, business magnates. This woman is protected by people who can ruin lives with a phone call. Michael stood up, determination burning in his eyes. I don't care who's behind this. Riley will be reunited with her daughter. Then prepare for war, Mr. Jordan. They won't give Blair up without a fight. Wyatt put away the documents. And there's something else you need to know. What? Blair's adoptive parents, the Emersons, are getting nervous. They called Kendall Avery 3 times yesterday. Wyatt smiled, but it was a dangerous smile. It seems someone has already discovered you're investigating. How? I don't know, but it means one thing. They know they're losing control of the situation. Wyatt headed for the door. Oh, Mr. Jordan, there's one last thing that will interest you. Michael held his breath. Speak. Blair has been asking persistent questions about the pretty nanny of the Jordan twins at school. She's asked 3 different teachers if they know Riley Monroe. Wyatt's smile was genuine now. It seems even 10 years couldn't completely erase the connection between mother and daughter. The door closed, leaving Michael with the devastating revelation. His nanny and his lost daughter were closer than they had ever imagined. The next day, Wyatt called Michael. Mr. Jordan, I found something that's going to make you furious. Wyatt's voice echoed through the phone with a coldness Michael had never heard before. The Emersons aren't just collectors. They are systematic predators. Michael was in his office watching Riley play with Victoria and Isabel in the garden through the window. The scene's tranquility starkly contrasted with the brewing storm. Tell me everything. Richard and Patricia Emerson have adopted 5 black children over the past 15 years, all between 1 and 2 years old, all through Kendall Avery. Wyatt paused, a calculated beat. But here's the chilling detail. 3 of those children have disappeared from the records upon turning 16. Michael's blood ran cold. Disappeared how? Officially? Early emancipation. In practice? No one knows where they are. No family, no friends, no trace. Wyatt's voice dropped to a graver tone. Mr. Jordan, we're talking about potential human trafficking masquerading as progressive adoption. Michael clenched his fists, his knuckles whitening. Is Blair in immediate danger? Blair turns 12 in 3 months. Historically, that's when the Emersons begin preparing the children for transition. Wyatt emailed documents. I've just sent photos of the Emerson residence. See for yourself. Michael opened the images on his computer, his stomach churning. The Emerson mansion resembled a museum of forced diversity. Photographs of black children in stage poses, like trophies on display shelves. Blair appeared in dozens of them, always with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. My God, Michael whispered. There's more, Mr. Jordan. I've hired an informant within Blair's school. Wyatt paused for dramatic effect. Blair has been confiding in teachers about recurring dreams. Dreams of a real mommy who sang her to sleep. Michael felt a sharp pang in his chest. Riley used to sing to her when she was a baby. And there's more. Blair is constantly drawing the same female figure, a young black woman, always with tears streaming down her face. Wyatt's voice grew urgent. Mr. Jordan, this child hasn't forgotten her biological mother. She's being haunted by memories she can't comprehend. What else have you discovered about the Emersons? They have a network of partners, other families who adopt through Kendall Avery, judges who fast-track proceedings, lawyers who make documents vanish. Wyatt sighed heavily. We're up against a machine, Mr. Jordan, a machine that has been operating with impunity for decades. Michael looked back at Riley. She was telling the twins a story, and for a moment she imagined Blair there with them. Wyatt, I need you to do something. Anything. I want 24-hour surveillance on the Emerson residence. If they try to move Blair, I want to know immediately. Michael stood up, walking to the window. And I want every possible document on these other children who've disappeared. If we're going to war with these monsters, let's go in with enough ammunition. I'm already arranging it, but Mr. Jordan... Wyatt hesitated. There's something else you need to know. About Riley. What is it? She's been trying to schedule a court hearing for months through a lawyer she managed to get pro bono. The hearing has been set for next week. Wyatt's voice carried a bitter irony. Guess who the social worker assigned to the case will be? Kendall Avery. Exactly. And Mr. Jordan, I have a feeling this hearing is going to be far more dramatic than anyone anticipates. Michael hung up the phone, a sense of urgency burning in his veins. Through the window, he saw Riley hugging Victoria and Isabel, and he knew he couldn't wait any longer. It was time to tell his daughters about Blair. It was time to prepare the entire family for the battle ahead. Daddy, why are you so nervous? Victoria held Michael's hand as they walked toward the Whitmore Academy Science Fair. You're sweating. Michael tried to smile, but he knew it was forced. Riley walked beside them, equally tense, though she didn't know precisely why. It's just an important day, sweetie. Riley, you're acting strange today, too. Isabel observed their nanny with childlike curiosity. You look scared? Riley swallowed hard. Michael had only told her that Blair attended the same school, but hadn't yet revealed she was his daughter. They had decided their first meeting should be natural, without pressure. I am a little nervous, yes. Crowded places make me feel this way. It was a lie. Riley wasn't nervous because of the crowd. She was terrified of the possibility of seeing Blair and not knowing how to react. What if the girl felt nothing? What if 10 years had completely erased any trace of the love they had shared? They entered the school gymnasium, decorated with hundreds of colorful science projects. Children darted between booths. Parents took pictures. Teachers explained experiments. It was the typical joyous chaos of school events. Look, Victoria exclaimed, pointing excitedly. It's Blair! Hi, Blair! Riley felt the world momentarily stand still. The girl who turned at the sound of her name was perfect. Curly hair pulled back into pigtails, bright almond-shaped eyes, a smile that lit up her face when she saw the Jordan twins. Riley immediately recognized her own features in Blair's face, but she also saw something else, a subtle sadness that an 11-year-old shouldn't carry. Victoria! Isabel! Blair ran towards them, but stopped abruptly as her eyes met Riley's. For a moment, the din of the gymnasium seemed to fade. Blair frowned as if trying to recall something important. Blair, this is Riley! Isabel tugged her by the hand. Our super cool babysitter I told you about. Hi. Blair shyly extended her hand, but when Riley touched it, both felt something electric. Blair quickly pulled her hand back, confused. You look familiar. Riley fought back tears. You look familiar too. Michael watched the scene unfold, his heart aching. The mother-daughter connection was undeniable, even after 10 years. But before he could utter a word, a cold voice sliced through the moment. Blair, darling, where have you been? Patricia Emerson approached, her calculating eyes quickly cataloging Riley and Michael. We've been looking for you. Riley observed the perfectly put-together blonde white woman and felt an instinctive surge of anger. This was the person who had raised her daughter for the past decade. "Mom, these are Victoria and Isabel Jordan, my friends from school." Blair pointed to the twins, but her eyes remained fixed on Riley. "And this is... Sorry, what was your name again?" "Riley Monroe." The answer slipped out before Riley could think. The effect was immediate. Patricia Emerson visibly paled. Richard Emerson, who had approached carrying a volcano project, nearly dropped everything. Blair, however, simply repeated the name softly. "Riley Monroe." The girl touched her forehead as if trying to access a distant memory. "Why does that name sound like a lullaby?" "Blair, we need to go. Now." Patricia gripped her daughter's arm tighter than necessary. "The volcano project needs to be presented in 5 minutes." "But I want to talk to..." "Now, Blair!" Richard Emerson's face was flushed with nervousness. Riley stepped forward, maternal instincts flaring. "She doesn't want to go. Let her stay a little longer." "Excuse me?" Patricia turned to Riley with disdain. "Who exactly are you to tell me how to raise my daughter?" The ensuing silence was fraught with tension. Victoria and Isabel exchanged bewildered glances. Blair watched the confrontation with growing curiosity. Michael was poised to intervene when Blair spoke. "Why do you all get flustered every time someone talks about real mothers?" The girl's question was innocent, but it cut like a knife. "And why do I always dream of a woman who looks like Riley?" Patricia and Richard exchanged a panicked look. "Blair, you're talking nonsense." "I'm not." Blair pulled away from Patricia's hand and walked towards Riley. "You used to sing, didn't you? You sang a song about a little star?" Riley felt the world tilt. It was the lullaby she had made up for Blair as a baby, a song no one else in the world knew. Tears began to stream down her face unchecked. "Little star, shine for me. Mommy protects you till the sun's up." Riley whispered the lyrics, and Blair finished. "Dream of angels, my darling. Mommy will be here when the day breaks." Blair's voice was thick with an emotion she didn't understand. The gymnasium around them seemed to fade away. Mother and daughter faced each other, a decade of separation shattered by a simple lullaby. Patricia Emerson was in full panic mode. "Richard, take Blair home. Now." She whirled on Michael, fury blazing in her eyes. "I don't know what game you're playing, but this will have legal ramifications." But Blair didn't move. For the first time in 10 years, she felt whole. "Riley, you're my mother, aren't you?" The question echoed through the gymnasium like thunder. Riley crouched down until she was at Blair's level, tears falling freely. "Yes, my love, I'm your mother, and I never, not for 1 second, stopped looking for you." What happened next was chaos. Richard Emerson tried to physically drag Blair away, who began to scream. Victoria and Isabel started to cry, not understanding what was happening. Michael immediately called Wyatt, and Riley. Riley held her daughter's hands for the first time in 10 years and knew she would never let her go again. The war had officially begun, and this time, Riley wasn't alone. "They can't separate me from her again. They can't." Riley paced Michael's office, her hands trembling as she clutched a cup of cold coffee. "Blair recognized me, Mr. Jordan. She sang our song." Michael had been on the phone for hours, marshaling every available resource. Lawyers, investigators, even media contacts. "Riley, breathe. We'll get through this." "You don't understand." Riley stopped abruptly, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "The Emersons have already called the police. They're claiming I'm trying to emotionally manipulate Blair, that I'm a dangerous stranger." Victoria and Isabel sat on the sofa, still processing the revelation that Blair was Riley's daughter. Isabel timidly raised her hand. "Riley, does that mean Blair is our sister?" Riley crouched in front of the girls, trying to explain the inexplicable. "Not a blood sister, darlings. But, yes, in a way, she's our family now." "Then we'll help her." Victoria stood up, determined. "Daddy always says family protects family. Blair is family." Michael hung up the phone and turned to the group. "The good news is I've managed to expedite the custody hearing. It's Monday, 3 days from now." "And the bad news?" Riley asked, dreading the answer. Kendall Avery secured a temporary injunction. Blair stays with the Emersons until the court rules. Michael saw Riley begin to falter and quickly took her by the shoulders. But Riley, listen, I have Chicago's top family lawyer working on this. We have evidence of emotional neglect by the Emersons. And we have something they never anticipated. Blair remembers you. The phone rang. It was Wyatt. Mr. Jordan, we have a problem. The investigator's voice was strained. The Emersons are trying to move Blair out of the city. I found a lawyer getting emergency school transfer documents. Riley cried out, "They're going to run away with her! They won't!" Michael was already dialing another number. "Wyatt, use every contact we have. I want a court order preventing any travel for Blair outside of Illinois. Now, I'm already on it. But Mr. Jordan, there's something else you need to know." Wyatt hesitated. "I gained access to Blair's psychological records at school. She's been doing disturbing drawings." "What kind of drawings?" "Drawings of a little girl trapped in a gilded cage, a woman crying outside, and several shadowy figures holding keys." Wyatt's voice deepened. "Mr. Jordan, this child isn't merely unhappy. She's being psychologically tortured." Riley crumpled into her chair. "My baby! What have they done to my baby?" "Riley, look at me." Michael knelt before her. "In 3 days, you will walk into that courtroom and you will fight for your daughter. And I will be by your side. Victoria and Isabel will be by your side. Wyatt has gathered enough evidence to bring down the Emersons." "What if it's not enough?" "It will be." Michael's voice was laced with absolute conviction. "Because Blair remembers you, Riley. After 10 years of brainwashing, she still remembers her real mother. That's more powerful than any money or influence." Victoria moved closer and took Riley's hand. "Riley, you know how to fight. You took care of us for 3 years. You're the strongest person we know. And Blair will see that too." Isabel joined her sister. "When she sees how you fight for her, she'll understand that you never gave up." Riley looked at the 2 girls she had grown to love as her own daughters and felt a new strength surge within her. "You're right. I've fought for Blair every single day for the past 10 years. I won't stop now." Michael smiled for the first time in hours. "Then let's prepare for war. Wyatt, I want all the documents organized. Riley, I want you to write a letter to Blair, explaining everything that's happened. Girls, you'll help show the judge what Blair's life would be like in a family that truly loves her." "And Mr. Jordan," Riley met his gaze, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Why are you doing this? Why are you risking so much for us?" Michael looked out the window, where he could see the garden where his daughters played every day, where Riley had cared for them so lovingly. "Because family isn't about blood, Riley. It's about love. And Blair deserves to grow up in a family that truly loves her, not one that collects her like a trophy." The phone rang again. Wyatt had secured the restraining order. Blair could not be removed from the city. The first victory was theirs. But the real battle would begin Monday. And none of them imagined the biggest revelation was yet to come. That social worker Kendall Avery held a secret that would change everything. The day of the hearing arrived, and the courtroom was as tense as a battlefield before war. Riley entered through the main doors alongside Michael Jordan and attorney Dr. Marcus Stone, one of the nation's foremost authorities on family law. She wore a simple blue dress, her hands trembling slightly, but her chin held high with determination. "Remember," Dr. Stone whispered as they headed to their seats, "today isn't just about proving you're the biological mother. It's about proving you're the real mother." Across the hall, the Emersons sat with a team of 3 expensive lawyers, all in impeccable suits and projecting confident expressions. Richard Emerson nervously adjusted his tie, while Patricia feigned reading documents to avoid Riley's gaze. Blair sat between them, looking small and lost. She wore a pink dress she'd obviously not chosen, her hair pulled back in a style far too formal for an 11-year-old. Her eyes scanned the room until they found Riley's, and for the first time in days, a small smile touched her lips. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Elizabeth Carver," the bailiff announced. The judge entered, a middle-aged black woman with intelligent eyes and a reputation for being rigorously fair. Riley felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this woman would understand what was at stake. "You may be seated." Judge Carver settled in and opened the file. We are here to resolve the custody of the minor, Blair Emerson, born Blair Monroe. Before we begin, I need the social worker assigned to this case to present her report. Ms. Kendall Avery, please. Riley's heart leaped at the name. She turned to see the woman who had blocked her request for a decade, the woman who shared the name of her lost sister. The back door opened, and Kendall Avery entered the courtroom. An elegant woman, approximately 35 years old, in a sharp gray suit and carrying a brown leather briefcase. Her hair was secured in a professional bun, and she moved with the assuredness of someone who had commanded such spaces for years. But when Riley saw her face, the world stopped. The same almond-shaped eyes, the same nose shape, the same dimple on her chin that Riley saw in the mirror every day. It was like looking at an older, more successful version of herself. "Sis," the whisper escaped Riley's lips before she could stop it. "Is that you?" Kendall froze mid-stride toward the social work table. Her eyes met Riley's, and for a moment, the professional mask dissolved entirely. In its place was the shocked face of a woman confronting a ghost from her past. "Riley?" Kendall's voice emerged fractured, laden with a mixture of disbelief and horror. "No, it can't be." The courtroom erupted into murmurs. Judge Carver banged her gavel. "Order! Ms. Avery, do you know the plaintiff?" Kendall scanned the room, acutely aware that every eye was fixed upon her. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her hands trembling almost imperceptibly. Your Honor, I must recuse myself from this case." "On what grounds?" The judge leaned forward. Riley rose, tears streaming down her face. "Kendall, it's me, Riley, your baby sister." Kendall's reaction was akin to a physical blow, as if she'd been punched squarely in the gut. "No, no, no, no." She shook her head frantically. "This cannot be happening. Ms. Avery," Judge Carver's tone sharpened, "you will explain your relationship with the plaintiff, or I will hold you in contempt." Kendall's gaze darted from Riley to Blair, then to the Emersons. The dawning realization of all she had done began to etch itself onto her face like a brand of horror. She's my sister." The words tumbled out like a confession wrenched from her. "Riley Monroe is my younger sister." The courtroom fell into a profound, absolute silence. Blair pushed up from her seat, her eyes flicking between the two women. The Emersons were ashen-faced like specters. Michael gripped Riley's arm, her knees threatening to buckle. Your sister," Judge Carver removed her spectacles. "Ms. Avery, are you telling me that for 10 years you denied 47 family reunification requests, fully cognizant that the plaintiff was your own sister?" Riley stepped forward, her voice thick with emotion yet resolute. "Kendall, why? Why did you do this to me? Why did you keep me from Blair?" Kendall collapsed into the nearest chair, burying her face in her hands. When she looked up, her eyes were red-rimmed, swollen with tears. I thought I was protecting you." "Protecting me?" Riley's voice was a raw shout, the accumulated pain of a decade exploding forth. "You protected me by separating me from my daughter? You protected me by ignoring my desperate pleas? You were just a child." Kendall stood abruptly, her own voice rising in a shout now. 18, pregnant, alone. I thought Blair would be better off with a family that could offer her opportunities, an education, stability. And you," Riley advanced on Kendall, "you had all of those things. You were adopted into a wealthy family. Why didn't you help me when I needed it?" "Because I was scared." Kendall's confession reverberated throughout the courtroom. "I was afraid that if I got involved, if I acknowledged our connection, they'd uncover my past, that I would lose everything I'd built." Judge Carver rapped her gavel repeatedly. "Order! This hearing is adjourned for 15 minutes. Ms. Avery, you will accompany me to my chambers immediately." But before anyone could move, a small but clear voice cut through the chaos. "Are you sisters?" All heads turned to Blair, who had stood up and walked to the middle of the aisle, looking between Riley and Kendall with a mixture of confusion and fascination. "Blair, return to your seat at once." Patricia Emerson tried to approach, but Blair ignored her. "The woman who took me from my real mother?" Is she her sister? Blair looked directly at Kendall. Did you separate your own family? Kendall crouched down to Blair's level, tears falling freely now. Blair, I thought I was doing the right thing. Did you know me when I was a baby? Blair's question was innocent, yet devastating. No, I wasn't there when you were born. Kendall looked at Riley, her eyes begging for forgiveness. Blair looked at Riley, then at Kendall, processing the information with the brutal logic of a child. So you chose to give me to strangers, instead of helping your own sister raise me? The ensuing silence was deafening. Kendall had no answer. There was no answer that could justify 10 years of separation, 10 years of denied requests, 10 years of a mother mourning her lost child. It was then that Blair did something no one expected. She walked over to Riley and took her hand. I want to stay with my real mother. Her voice was clear and resolute. No matter what happens, I want to stay with her. Riley knelt and embraced Blair for the first time in 10 years, holding her as if her life depended on it. I love you, my baby. I love you so much. I love you too, Mommy, Blair whispered into Riley's ear. I always knew you existed. I always knew you loved me. And there, in the midst of the courtroom's pandemonium, with Kendall weeping in remorse, the Emersons fuming, and Justice looking on, mother and daughter were finally reunited. Love had triumphed over bureaucracy, over prejudice, over fear. But the battle was far from over. Kendall Avery faced a pivotal choice: uphold the system that had molded her, or fight for the family she had long since abandoned. In the courthouse corridor, shielded from the prying eyes and flashing cameras of reporters who had converged following the explosive revelation, Riley and Kendall stood facing each other for the first time in 25 years, two sisters acutely aware of their shared identity. Do you remember me singing to you when we were little? Riley asked, her voice trembling. Do you recall our song? Kendall closed her eyes, and for a fleeting moment, the composed, controlled professional vanished. Two little sisters in one world, together forever, wherever we may roam. She opened her eyes, now red-rimmed with tears. Of course I remember, Riley. I never forgot. Then how? Riley stepped closer, decades of pain erupting like molten lava. How could you do this to me? Kendall leaned against the wall, as if needing its support to remain upright. Do you want the truth? The unvarnished truth? I deserve it, don't you think? Kendall took a deep breath, steeling herself for the most arduous confession of her life. When I was adopted at 12, the Averys made it unequivocally clear that my past was no more. No more impoverished sister, no more drug-addicted mother, none of that life. I was Kendall Avery now, the daughter of a judge and a socialite, and if I wished to maintain that status, I would have to permanently erase Riley Monroe. But you didn't forget, Riley countered, crossing her arms. You knew exactly who I was when you denied Blair. I found you 10 years ago, Riley. 10 years ago when I saw your name on a reunification petition. I nearly fainted. Kendall began pacing agitatedly. I hired private investigators. I uncovered everything about your life, about Blair, about how you two were separated. And yet you denied me 42 times after that? Because you were precisely what I feared becoming, Kendall exploded. A single mother, poor, struggling to survive. I looked at you and saw what my life could have been had the Averys not saved me. Riley felt as though she had been physically struck. Saved you? Kendall, they didn't save you. They erased you. They gave me opportunities, education, a career, social standing. Kendall gestured frantically. I became someone important, someone respected, someone who breaks up families for money, Riley shouted. Someone who collects children like trophies for affluent families. Is this what you call success? Kendall stopped walking, as if the words had been a physical blow. I thought I was giving these children better opportunities. Better opportunities for Blair? What opportunities did you give Blair? Riley pulled out her phone and showed Kendall photos Wyatt had procured from the Emerson home. Do you see these pictures? Does she look happy? Does she look loved? Kendall looked at the images and, for the first time, truly saw Blair was always a step behind in the family photos, always with a forced smile, always looking out of place. My God, what have I done? You've done what the Averys taught you to do. You've put social status above family love. Riley put her phone away, her voice softening. But Kendall, you can still fix this. How? How can I fix 10 years of separation? Blair is my niece, the only blood family I have left besides you. I convinced myself it was for her own good. And now I see I was protecting myself, not Blair. Kendall clasped Riley's hands. Riley, I've become everything we always hated when we were kids. I've become the system that tore us apart. Riley looked into her sister's eyes and saw something she hadn't expected. Genuine remorse. Kendall, you have a choice now. You can continue to be Kendall Avery, the social worker who maintains the status quo. Or you can go back to being Kendall Monroe, my big sister who used to protect me from the monsters under the bed. But if I testify against the Emersons, if I expose the system, I'll lose everything. My career, my reputation, my life as I know it. But you'll gain your family back. Riley cupped her sister's face in her hands. Kendall, Blair needs to know she has an aunt who loves her. I need my sister back. And you need to forgive yourself for what you've done. What if it's too late? What if Blair can never forgive me? Children are wiser than adults about forgiveness. Riley smiled the first time since they'd reunited. Blair has spent 10 years knowing something was wrong in her life. When she knows she has an aunt willing to fight for her now, she'll understand. Kendall wiped her tears and, for the first time in decades, made a decision based on love rather than fear. What do you need me to do? Go back in there with me. Tell the judge everything you've told me here. Expose the forced adoption ring. Bring Blair home. Riley extended her hand. Be my big sister again. Kendall looked at the outstretched hand, then into Riley's eyes. For a moment, she saw the 7-year-old girl she used to comfort after nightmares, the girl who called her Mana with absolute adoration. 2 little sisters in one world. Kendall began to softly sing, Together forever, wherever we go. Riley finished. They embraced there in the hallway, 2 women who had walked opposite paths in life, finally rediscovering what truly mattered. Family. When they pulled apart, both had determined eyes. It was time to return to court. It was time for Kendall Avery to choose to be Kendall Monroe. It was time to bring Blair home. Riley, Kendall held her sister's hand before they entered. Promise you won't abandon me again, no matter what happens in there? We're sisters, Kendall. Real sisters don't abandon each other. Riley squeezed her hand. Now let's go get our girl. And together, for the first time in 25 years, Riley and Kendall Monroe entered the courtroom side by side, ready to face anything for Blair's sake. When Riley and Kendall returned to the courtroom, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Judge Carver had resumed the session, and the Emersons appeared more agitated than before. Richard was whispering frantically with his lawyers, while Patricia clutched Blair with a possessiveness bordering on desperation. Mrs. Avery, the judge addressed Kendall sternly. Following our private conversation, do you have anything to declare to this court? Kendall took a deep breath, glanced at Riley, who offered an encouraging nod, then stood. Yes, Your Honor. I have a full confession to make. The Emersons' lawyers exchanged nervous glances. Dr. Stone, Riley's attorney, leaned forward with interest. Blair watched the proceedings with wide eyes. For the past 10 years, I have systematically denied all requests for Riley Monroe's reunification with her daughter Blair. Kendall's voice was clear, yet laden with emotion. Not for valid professional or legal reasons, but for personal and prejudiced ones. Continue, the judge commanded. Riley Monroe is my biological sister. We were separated as children. She was 7, I was 12. When Blair was born, I was not present. She was removed from Riley's custody a year later. I was already a social worker, and the case landed on my desk by chance. I knew I was separating a loving mother from her daughter. The courtroom fell into a profound silence. Patricia Emerson visibly paled. Ms. Avery, the judge leaned forward, are you confessing to an abuse of power and conflict of interest on a criminal scale? Yes, Your Honor, Kendall stated without hesitation. And there's more. The Emersons were not the only ones. Over the past 12 years, I have facilitated the removal of dozens of black children from impoverished families to place them with wealthy white families who use them as symbols of social status. That's a lie. Richard Emerson stood abruptly. We love Blair like our own daughter. Blair turned to him with an expression that silenced everyone in the courtroom. You love me? Of course, darling. Patricia tried to sound convincing. Then why did you never want to know about my dreams? Blair's voice was small but piercing. Why did you get angry when I asked about my real family? Blair, don't ask such questions in front of strangers. Patricia attempted to silence her. Riley isn't a stranger. Blair stood, her voice gaining strength. She knew my song. She knew how to stop me from crying when I was a baby. Riley stood as well, unable to remain even a second longer apart from Blair. Blair, can I tell you about when you were a baby? Judge Carver nodded, sensing this would be the true evidence of the case. You were born on a rainy morning, March 23rd. Riley approached Blair slowly. You cried once when you were born, then you were quiet, looking at me as if you'd known me for years. Blair smiled, absorbing every word. You had a tiny birthmark behind your left ear that I kissed every night before sleep. Riley pointed, and Blair instinctively touched the spot. And you only stopped crying when I sang our special song. The Little Star Song? Blair asked, her eyes shining. The Little Star Song, Riley confirmed. That I made up just for you because you were my special little star. Patricia Emerson attempted to intervene again. Blair, don't listen to these romantic fantasies. We gave you a better life. Education, opportunities. You gave me things. Blair turned to Patricia with devastating clarity. But they never gave me real love. Love isn't buying me expensive dresses or taking me to parties where I'm the only black child so you can look good. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Richard Emerson tried one last gambit. Your Honor, this child is being emotionally manipulated. I am not being manipulated, Blair shouted with a surprising force for an 11-year-old. You manipulated me for 10 years. You made me believe I didn't have a mother, that no one wanted me. Blair ran to Riley and threw herself into her arms. Mommy, I'm so sorry for believing them. I'm so sorry for doubting you existed. Riley held Blair as if her life depended on it, tears streaming freely. You have nothing to apologize for, my love. None of this was your fault. You were just a baby. It was then that Blair did something no one expected. She turned to Kendall, who was watching the scene with tears in her eyes. Are you my aunt? Blair asked. Kendall knelt down to Blair's level, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, I'm your Aunt Kendall, and I made the biggest mistake of my life when I let them separate you from your mother. Why? Blair's question was simple, yet laden with all the pain of 10 years. Because I was scared. Scared I wasn't good enough. Scared of losing what I thought was important. Kendall gently took Blair's hands. But I know now that family is the only thing that's truly important. And Blair, if you'll let me, I want to be your real aunt. I want to love you, protect you, be there for all your birthdays, graduations, dreams, and nightmares. Blair looked at Kendall for a long moment, then at Riley, then back at Kendall. Do you promise you'll never separate us again? I promise I will spend the rest of my life making sure you two stay together. Kendall extended her hand to Blair. Family forever? Blair hesitated only a second, then clasped Kendall's hand and Riley's at the same time. Family forever. Judge Carver watched the scene unfold. A mother, a daughter, and an aunt reunited after a decade of separation, and knew her decision was made. But first she had a few words for the Emersons. Mr. and Mrs. Emerson, the judge turned to the couple with a steely gaze. You will have much to explain in a criminal investigation that begins today. And Mrs. Avery, your confession will be forwarded to the district attorney's office. Kendall nodded, accepting the consequences. Your Honor, I am prepared to face any punishment, but I only ask that Blair be allowed to stay with her birth mother in the interim. That, the judge declared, banging her gavel, is precisely the next issue we shall address. Judge Carver turned to the Emersons with an expression that could freeze hell. Mr. and Mrs. Emerson, you have had 10 years to prove yourselves loving parents to Blair. This is your moment to convince this court that Blair should remain in your care. Richard Emerson stood, attempting to recapture his lost composure. Your Honor, Patricia and I have given Blair everything a child could possibly want. Top-tier education, international travel, cultural opportunities she would never have had in a family. He paused, searching for the right words. In a family what, Mr. Emerson? The judge leaned forward. In a more modest family. Richard avoided Riley's gaze. Dr. Stone, Riley's attorney, rose immediately. Your Honor, may I question the Emersons regarding how these opportunities were provided? You may. Dr. Stone approached Richard, documents in hand. Mr. Emerson, is it true that in the past 5 years, Blair has been hospitalized 3 times for household accidents? Patricia Emerson visibly paled. Children get hurt playing. Accidents such as a fractured arm from falling down the stairs, a deep laceration to the forehead from walking into a door, and burns to her hands from playing with the stove. Dr. Stone displayed the medical records. Objection! The Emerson's attorney stood. These documents are irrelevant. Overruled. The judge glanced at the papers. Proceed, Dr. Stone. Mr. Emerson, is it true that Blair was observed by neighbors being locked in the basement of the house for disobedience? Richard was sweating now. That is a normal discipline. Lies! The voice came from an unexpected source. Victoria Jordan was standing in the courtroom gallery. Daddy, they're lying. Victoria, sit down. Michael tried to calm his daughter. No! Victoria wrenched her hand from his. Your Honor, Blair told me things at school. Horrible things they do to her. The judge hesitated, then motioned for Victoria to approach. Young lady, how old are you? 11, Your Honor. The same age as Blair. And Blair told you about her home life? Victoria looked at Blair, who nodded encouragingly. Blair told me that when she asks questions about her real family, they lock her in her room without dinner, and that when she dreams too loudly at night, they make her sleep in the basement because it annoys the guests. Patricia Emerson stood up abruptly. That child is lying. Blair never said that. I did say it. Blair stood up too, her voice laden with years of repressed pain. I told Victoria because she's my only true friend. Because you never let me have real friends. Blair, stop this immediately. Richard tried to use his authoritative tone. No! Blair turned to him with a fury that surprised everyone. You've spent 10 years telling me to shut up, telling me to be grateful, making me pose for your fake photos. Riley approached Blair but did not interfere. His daughter needed to speak. You never asked what I wanted for my birthday, Blair continued, tears streaming down her face. You just bought things that looked good in Instagram photos. Pink dresses I hate, white dolls that don't look like me, books about blonde princesses. We gave you the best. Patricia attempted a maternal tone. The best? Blair laughed, but it was a hollow sound. The best would have been letting me stay with my real mother. Kendall stepped forward, her eyes glistening with angry tears. Your Honor, I must admit to something else. For the past 5 years, I've received 6 reports from Blair's teachers regarding concerning behaviors. What kind of behaviors? The judge asked. Blair constantly drew pictures of trapped girls, crying women, and houses with all the windows shut. Kendall presented a folder. The teachers recommended therapy. The Emersons refused, saying it was just an active imagination. Dr. Stone approached Patricia with another document. Mrs. Emerson, is it true that you told the school principal, and I quote, Blair needs to learn to be grateful for what she has instead of fantasizing about a life she never had? Patricia paled. That was taken out of context. And is it true that you forbade Blair from participating in the school's African American Studies program? Dr. Stone continued relentlessly. We felt it would be divisive, Richard murmured. Blair exploded. You wanted me to forget I'm black. You wanted a black doll who would behave as you wished, but would never question why I didn't look like you. The final revelation came from an unexpected source. Isabel Jordan stood up in the gallery. Your Honor, Blair showed me her room at the Emersons' house. The judge sighed. Another child witness. Blair's room has no pictures of her as a baby, no toys she picked out, and it has a lock on the outside of the door. Isabel spoke quickly. She told me she's locked in there every time she misbehaves. The courtroom fell into shocked silence. Richard and Patricia Emerson exchanged glances, knowing they had lost completely. Judge Carver slammed her gavel down hard. I've heard enough. Mr. and Mrs. Emerson, you are not parents, you are collectors, and Blair is not a trophy to adorn your family photos. Patricia made one last desperate plea. Your Honor, we can change. We can be better parents. Blair turned to Patricia with devastating maturity. You had 10 years to be real parents, 10 years to truly love me, but you only loved me when it was convenient. The judge stood. This hearing is adjourned. We will reconvene in 1 hour for my final decision. But before anyone could move, Blair ran to Riley and threw herself into her arms. Mommy, can I go home with you today? Riley held her daughter, finally allowing herself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, justice would finally be served. During the recess, Kendall found herself alone in the courthouse bathroom, staring at her own reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back seemed foreign, the same features, but something fundamental had shifted in her eyes. For the first time in decades, she saw Kendall Monroe looking back, not Kendall Avery. Her phone rang. It was Judge Harold Avery, her adoptive father. Kendall, I've just received some very troubling calls about you. His voice was cold. I'm hearing you're ruining your career over some obsession with your past. It's not an obsession, Dad. It's family, Kendall replied with a calmness that surprised even her. Family? Kendall, we are your family. We saved you from that life. The desperation in his voice was palpable. If you testify against the Emersons, if you expose the system, you will lose everything we built for you. And if I don't, I'll lose the only thing that truly matters. Kendall looked toward the bathroom door, knowing that on the other side Riley was waiting for her. Dad, thank you for everything you've done for me. But now it's time for me to do what's right. Kendall, if you walk out that door and testify, there will be no coming back. You won't be an Avery anymore. Kendall smiled, and for the first time in years, it was a genuine smile. I know. I'll be a Monroe again, and I'll finally be proud of it. She ended the call and walked out of the bathroom, where Riley was waiting in the hallway. Everything okay? Riley asked, noticing the determined set of her sister's jaw. Better than I've been in decades, Kendall squeezed Riley's hand. Riley, I need to tell you something before we go back in there. What? When you were taken from me at 7 years old, I promised I would find a way to protect you always. Kendall paused, her voice thick with emotion. I thought becoming part of the system was the way to do it, that if I had power, I could protect children like us. But it ended up doing the opposite. I ended up becoming exactly what hurt us. Kendall shook her head. But Riley, today I'm going to fulfill my original promise. Today I'm going to protect you, protect Blair, and protect all the other children this corrupt system has harmed. Riley hugged her sister. Kendall, are you sure? You'll lose everything. No, I'll gain everything. I'll get my sister back, my niece, my peace of mind. Kendall pulled away, her eyes shining with determination. Riley, are you ready to see your big sister finally be brave? I always knew you were brave, sis. I was just waiting for you to remember it. They returned to the courthouse hand in hand, and Kendall felt a peace she hadn't experienced in 25 years. When Judge Carver resumed the session, Kendall stood up immediately. Your Honor, I request permission to make a full statement regarding the corruption network operating within this city's adoption system. The Emersons' attorneys protested vehemently, but the judge silenced them. Proceed, Ms. Avery. It's Monroe, Your Honor. Kendall Monroe. She looked directly at Blair, who was sitting beside Riley. And what I'm about to tell you isn't just about Blair. It's about dozens of children who were ripped from loving families and placed with families who see them as status symbols. Kendall spent the next hour exposing everything. Names, dates, forged documents, bribes, political connections. She methodically dismantled the system that had created her, knowing she was destroying her own career in the process. Your Honor, Kendall concluded, I request that Blair Monroe be immediately returned to the custody of her biological mother, Riley Monroe, and I request that a criminal investigation be opened against everyone involved in this network, including myself." The room fell into absolute silence. Then slowly, Blair stood up and walked over to Kendall. "Aunt Kendall," Blair said softly, "thank you for finally being brave." Kendall knelt and hugged Blair for the first time as a true aunt, not as a system employee. "Thank you for forgiving me, my girl. Thank you for giving me a chance to be part of our family." Judge Carver banged her gavel. "This court's decision will be rendered in 15 minutes. But everyone in the room already knew the outcome. True family had triumphed over artificial family. Love had prevailed over status. And finally, after 10 years, Blair Monroe was going home." Judge Carver returned to the bench with a solemn yet resolute expression. The courtroom was packed. Reporters had infiltrated, the curious filled the galleries, and discreet cell phone cameras documented every move. After considering all testimony and evidence presented, the judge began. "This court hereby grants full and permanent custody of Blair Monroe to her biological mother, Riley Monroe." The court erupted in applause. Riley collapsed into tears, clutching Blair as if she would never let go again. Victoria and Isabel leaped for joy in the gallery. Michael smiled, tears welling in his eyes. "Furthermore," the judge continued, her voice rising above the commotion, "I am ordering an immediate criminal investigation into Richard and Patricia Emerson for child endangerment, document forgery, and conspiracy." The Emersons were swiftly escorted out by bailiffs, their faces ashen with shock and denial. "Ms. Monroe, Kendall Monroe," the judge addressed Kendall, "your confession will be forwarded to the district attorney's office. However, your full and voluntary cooperation will be taken into favorable consideration." Kendall stood. "Your Honor, I hereby resign my position as a social worker effective this moment, and I place myself entirely at the disposal of the justice system to atone for the harm I have caused. Your resignation is accepted." The judge brought down her gavel one final time. "This session is adjourned." The ensuing pandemonium was indescribable. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, but Riley could only see Blair, her daughter finally in her arms, finally home. "Mommy," Blair whispered into Riley's ear. "Can I call you Mommy forever now?" "Forever, my little star. Forever." Kendall approached timidly, still processing all she had lost and gained in the past few hours. "Riley, Blair, do you have room for a repentant aunt in your lives?" Blair released one of Riley's hands and extended it to Kendall. "Family is family, Aunt Kendall, and true family forgives." Outside the courthouse, a throng of reporters awaited them. Michael stepped forward, shielding his reunited family from the intrusive cameras and questions. "Mr. Jordan," a reporter shouted, "how did you get involved in this case?" Michael paused, glanced at Riley holding Blair, at Kendall beside them, and smiled. "Sometimes justice needs a little help finding its way. Riley Monroe is the bravest woman I know, and Blair is an extraordinary child who deserves to grow up surrounded by true love." "And what happens now?" another reporter asked. Riley moved closer to the microphones, Blair still in her arms. "Now we go home. We're going to be a family, and we're going to make sure no other child goes through what Blair went through." "Are you going to sue the system?" someone yelled. Kendall stepped forward. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life ensuring that this corrupt system is completely overhauled. Children deserve families who love them, not families who collect them." As they moved away from the cameras and into Michael's car, Blair looked out the rear window at the courthouse that had changed her life forever. "Mommy," she whispered, "I always knew you'd come for me." "Always." Riley kissed the top of her daughter's head. "And I always knew I'd find you, my love. Always." Their story was just beginning, but for now, after a decade of separation, tears, and struggle, mother and daughter were finally together, and nothing and no one would ever separate them again. A week after the hearing, Blair had moved into the bedroom next to Riley's. Her adjustment surprised everyone with its naturalness. "Mommy, can I help with breakfast?" Blair came down in her pajamas, her curly hair forming an aureole. Riley smiled, still getting used to Mommy every morning. "Of course, my love." Victoria and Isabel were already at the table. Blair was no longer a school friend. She was officially family. Blair, do you miss anything from the Emerson house? Isabel asked. Blair considered seriously. I miss the big room, but I don't miss feeling alone all the time. You'll never feel alone again, Victoria declared. Now you have two sisters. Chosen sisters are the best, Blair smiled. The phone rang. Dr. Martinez, the psychologist, wanted to discuss Blair's test results. I have wonderful news, she said on speakerphone. Her stress levels have decreased by 70% in 1 week. Blair, your brain is healing now that you're where you belong. Does that mean I'll never have to pretend to be someone I'm not again? Blair asked. Riley held her daughter's face. My love, you can be exactly who you are every single day for the rest of your life. Even if I want to learn about our history, about being black. Blair, Isabel chimed in. Dad said we can take African American history classes together. Blair beamed. Can I call Aunt Kendall and tell her? Riley nodded. Kendall called every day, slowly rebuilding her life and her place in the family. 6 months later, Riley stood before the federal courthouse with Blair and Kendall. Dozens of cameras captured the historic moment, the biggest overhaul of the adoption system in decades. Today marks a victory for all unjustly separated families, federal prosecutor Harrison announced. The Emersons had been sentenced to 10 years in prison. 8 families lost their fraudulent adoptions. Dozens of children were reunified. Blair, how does it feel knowing your story changed the system? A reporter asked. Happy that other children won't have to wait 10 years to find their true families. What's your message for other mothers? They asked Riley. Never give up. If you're a real mother, keep fighting. Your children need to know you never stop looking. Kendall, how did your life change from problem to solution? I lost a career, but I gained my family. True family is infinitely more valuable than artificial success. Kendall smiled with peace in her eyes. What have you learned about family? They answered almost in unison. That true family fights for each other, Riley began. Forgives and rebuilds, Kendall continued. And never gives up, no matter how long it takes, Blair concluded. Walking to the car, Blair asked, Can we get ice cream? Of course, my little star. And can we call Victoria, Isabel, and Aunt Kendall? Riley looked at Kendall, who watched with tears in her eyes. Aunt Kendall will always be welcome. The reform would save hundreds of children. But for them, the real victory had occurred months earlier, at their reunion. Justice had been served. Family had triumphed. If this story touched your heart and you believe in the power of family love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Share your own family stories and reunions in the comments. Together we can inspire more people to never give up fighting for those we love. Hit the notification bell to be alerted about our upcoming inspiring stories that showcase how love always finds a way.